$10 million in taxpayer money, a 30-year prison risk, and one politician who thought she'd never get caught. Letitia James. She's not just any official. She's the Attorney General of New York, a figure who rose to prominence with a steely gaze and a reputation for unrelenting pursuit of justice. Her name became synonymous with high-profile battles, most notably her crusade against Donald Trump, where she wielded the law like a battering ram, vowing to hold the powerful accountable. "No one is above the law," she declared, her voice echoing through campaign ads and fundraising emails, galvanizing supporters who saw her as a champion for the everyman. But while she stood on podiums preaching integrity, she was allegedly orchestrating a scheme to cheat the very system she swore to protect. For the regular working American, the one scraping by, dreaming of a home, a family, a slice of stability, this story cuts deep. Let's break it down. You want to buy a house, right? A place to call your own, to stop renting, to build equity like those financial gurus on TV promise. You learn that if the house is your primary residence, where you actually live, sleep, and raise your kids, you get perks, lower interest rates, better loan terms, smaller down payments, and more lenient rules. It's a system designed to help families, not speculators. The catch? You have to live there. You can't just claim a property as your primary residence to game the system, flip it for profit, or hide money. That's not just dishonest. It's a federal crime, the kind that lands regular people in handcuffs. But Letitia James, New York's top law enforcer, allegedly did exactly that. She signed papers declaring a house in Norfolk, Virginia, as her primary residence, a move that secured her a sweeter mortgage deal. She handed power of attorney to a woman named Seamus Thompson Hariston to handle the transaction, signed federal housing forms, and checked the box that said she'd live there. Except she didn't. James never packed her bags for Virginia. She didn't resign her post in New York, didn't trade her Manhattan press conferences or Albany meetings for a quiet life on Sterling Street. She stayed put, delivering speeches about justice, shaking hands at fundraisers, and basking in the glow of her public persona. By claiming that Norfolk house as her primary residence, she allegedly secured a lower interest rate, saving thousands, maybe tens of thousands, over the life of the loan. That discount was meant for working-class families, the ones who play by the rules, not for a career politician pulling strings in the shadows. The hypocrisy stings sharper when you consider her public crusade. While she was prosecuting Donald Trump for real estate fraud, accusing him of lying to secure better financial terms, her own signature sat on documents doing something eerily similar. It's not just irony, it's not just hypocrisy, it's a betrayal of every American who trusted her to uphold the law. James once said, "Everyday Americans cannot lie to a bank to get a mortgage. If they did, the government would throw the book at them." Those words, once a rallying cry, now sound like a confession. Someone noticed the discrepancy, and unlike the media, who seemed content to let the story simmer in obscurity, this person wasn't staying quiet. Enter William P., a housing reform advocate with a pedigree rooted in his grandfather's legacy as a home-building titan. William wasn't a politician or a publicity hound. He was a man who knew the housing market's underbelly, knew what mortgage fraud looked like, smelled like, and how it eroded trust in the system. He received a plain envelope, no return address, containing a stack of documents. The federal form James signed, emails confirming her intent to list the Virginia property as her primary residence, and a handwritten note in Sharpie, underlined twice. She lied to the bank. She thinks no one will care. William didn't hesitate. He read the documents, sat still for a moment, and then picked up the phone. His call to the Department of Justice was calm but seismic. "You better sit down," he told the clerk. "This is about Letitia James, and it's going to change everything." This wasn't about politics for him. It was about theft, manipulation, and a public servant using taxpayer trust to enrich herself while cloaked in the rhetoric of justice. If this story doesn't make your blood boil, consider this. The woman who vowed to seize Trump Tower might lose her own front porch. The law she wielded as a sword was about to turn into a mirror, reflecting her own actions back at her. William P.'s letter to the DOJ was no grand manifesto. It was 3 pages of cold, hard facts, accompanied by 3 attachments that hit like a prosecutor's gavel. At the top, Fannie Mae Form 30,047, where Letitia James, self-styled crusader of justice, declared the Norfolk home her primary residence. A power of attorney document, signed and sealed, gave her proxy full control over the transaction. And the final blow, a loan application with a bold checkmark in the box, stating, "This property will be used as my primary residence." This wasn't speculation or rumor, it was documentation, the kind James herself had used to build cases against her opponents. Now it was aimed at her, a loaded gun bearing her own fingerprints. William mailed it to the DOJ's Office of Public Integrity, a delivery as deliberate as a bomb placed on the steps of bureaucracy. The DOJ didn't sit on it. They moved with a speed reserved for crises, terrorism, espionage, or, apparently, a high-profile official caught in a lie. Preliminary findings were forwarded to the FBI, a case ID was assigned, and just like that, Letitia James went from enforcer to subject. An email landed in her inbox, understated but chilling. "This is to notify your office that a matter concerning your personal mortgage disclosures has been referred to our investigatory division. Please contact Special Agent Lenny if you wish to submit preliminary documentation." James read it once, then again. No flinch, no heavy breath, just a slow, calculated smirk. "Here we go again," she whispered to an empty room. "Another bunch of boys thinking they've found my weak spot." She closed her laptop and faced her team. 3 aides, 2 speechwriters, and a former campaign manager with the haunted look of a man who hadn't slept soundly in years. "Gentlemen," she began, her voice low and laced with venom, "it's showtime. Someone thinks I don't know how this game works." The room fell silent, the kind of quiet that politicians dread, where no one speaks first for fear of being scapegoated. She stood, walked to the window of her downtown Brooklyn office, and stared at the skyline. "Trump lied about square footage, and I sued him. I write one number wrong on a housing form, and suddenly I'm the criminal?" She scoffed. "This isn't about law, it's about bloodlust. They want to see me burn because I dared to win." She pointed at her communications director. "Draft a statement, not defensive, defiant. Use the word retaliation at least twice. Remind them I've never backed down from a fight. Not with banks, not with billionaires, not with bullies." An aide, timid, ventured, "Should we consult the legal team, ma'am?" Her glare could have cut steel. "I'll call them myself, not the state attorneys. I want my own people, the ones who don't ask questions I already know the answers to. That night, in a midtown hotel suite, far from prying eyes and paid for through a discreet shell company, she met her private legal team. Over lukewarm Pinot and legal pads, stained with red ink, she laid out her plan. We spin it. We buy time. We make this look like they're targeting me for being too good at my job. If that fails, we go scorched earth. For Letitia James, survival meant a war chest, or, in her case, a slush fund dressed up as a noble cause. Her name soon appeared in the inboxes of Albany's elite, specifically the governor's mansion, where Kathy Hochul, New York's governor, held court as a beacon of moderation, or, to her critics, a figurehead for a crumbling regime of progressive lawfare. The request was subtle but bold: an emergency legal contingency disbursement, Category B, reserved for protecting high-ranking officials from attacks. Not cyber attacks or espionage, but the kind of attack James now faced: a paper trail exposing her alleged lies. The ask? $2 million in legal retainer fees funded by taxpayers. James had already assembled her legal dream team, including a fixer rumored to have handled Hunter Biden's messier affairs. She didn't call it a bailout. She called it strategic reinforcement. This fund exists for politically motivated aggression, she told Hochul's team. Translation: I messed up, and I want the public to pay for the cleanup. In the governor's office, a young aide dared to speak up, his voice barely above a whisper across the marble conference table. Ma'am, if this leaks, it'll explode. State money for a personal defense tied to criminal charges? That's not optics. It's a firestorm. James didn't blink. She folded her arms, tilted her head, and delivered a line dripping with sanctimony. I'm not just an official. I am justice, and justice doesn't need permission. It needs protection. It was the kind of rhetoric that sounded noble until you remembered the context. A woman under federal scrutiny, clutching taxpayer money like a lifeline. For James, everything was politics until it got personal. Suing Trump was law. Getting caught was a witch hunt. Lying was strategy. Legal fees were an entitlement. But SL crates only work until someone lifts the lid, and someone already had. New York's Republican caucus was asking questions, and across town, a stack of printouts sat on a dark wooden table next to a glass of bourbon. In the steady hands of William P. Capitol Hill has a sound. Not the clack of heels or the rustle of papers, but the soft thud of a subpoena landing on polished oak. This one bore the name Letitia James in bold letters. The DOJ, after weeks of internal review, had issued a cautious but damning report. Possible violations of 18 U.S.C. sections 1001 and 1014. Recommending a congressional inquiry before prosecutorial action. Translation: there's a liar in your ranks, and you'd better handle it before we do. The memo reached Congressman Jim Jordan, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, a man who turned oversight hearings into political theater. He read it, leaned back, and scrawled 4 words on his legal pad: issue the damn summons. The subpoena was dispatched swiftly, but it wasn't alone. 2 more envelopes went out, carrying invitations, not indictments, for William P., the housing reform advocate, and Pam Bondi, the legal sharpshooter who'd made waves defending Trump during his impeachment. Bondi stepped out of a black SUV outside Fox News HQ, clutching a leather folder like a weapon. The press swarmed. Ms. Bondi, are you testifying against Letitia James? She didn't flinch. I'm testifying for the truth. If that buries Letitia James, that's on her." Adjusting her sunglasses, she added, "I love watching people explain how fraud is public service." The clip dominated cable news. Fox called it the hammer's return. MSNBC dismissed it as desperate optics, and Twitter dubbed it delicious. James, undeterred, faced the storm head-on. At a press conference outside the New York State building, she strode to the podium with the confidence of someone who'd weathered scandals before. "This isn't about law or facts," she declared, her voice sharp with defiance. "This is about certain men in Washington, white, entitled, afraid, who see a woman like me as a threat to their crumbling order. I won't be lectured on ethics by those who cheer voter suppression and use inner city as a dog whistle." The crowd's response was mixed. Half applause, half uneasy murmurs. James had played her signature card, identity as a shield, but the accusations were no longer vague. The documents were real, the money traceable, and two people were building a case around signatures she thought would stay buried. In a closed-door meeting in D.C., William P. and Pam Bondi strategized. "We thread her words around her like a noose," William said, flipping through photocopies. "Let the committee hear her say, 'No one is above the law,' then show the mortgage form she signed while lying about her residence." Bondi nodded, her eyes fixed on the form. She thought she was filing a housing application. She was writing her indictment. They planned meticulously. First, expose the primary residence lie, then scrutinize her Brooklyn brownstone, misclassified as a 4-unit structure to qualify for federal housing benefits. Finally, unveil the $10 million taxpayer-funded defense fund. Bondi smirked. "By the time I'm done, she'll be begging for an NDA." The stage was set. Capitol Hill's room 2118, the House Judiciary Committee's battleground, was packed. The walls seemed to hold their breath. Reporters sat shoulder to shoulder, pens poised not to report, but to carve. William P. took the podium, adjusting the mic without fanfare. His voice was calm but unyielding. "I'm not here because I oppose Letitia James. I'm here because I oppose fraud funded by American taxpayers." The simplicity of his words stripped away pretense. He opened his folder, presenting evidence like bullets in a clip. Exhibit 1, the power of attorney authorizing a proxy to declare the Virginia property as her primary residence. Exhibit 2, mortgage documents listing her as a full-time resident while she worked in New York. Exhibit 3, the Brooklyn brownstone misclassified to secure federal benefits. He paused, letting the weight settle like ash after an explosion. "This isn't about politics or technicalities. It's about principle. When the powerful lie on government forms, real people lose. People without attorneys on speed dial, who can't dismiss corruption as a clerical error." James, from the witness bench, crossed her legs and interjected unprompted. "Spare us the civics lesson, Mr. P. Your outrage feels rehearsed. If this weren't political theater, you wouldn't be here." The room stilled, not with reverence, but with tension. William didn't respond. That was Pam Bondi's cue. She rose, hands folded, her gaze cold and precise, like Hannah's former lawyer, now a legal predator, building a case as sharp as a blade. When Miss James said, "No one is above the law," we agreed, Bondi began. "What we didn't know was that she said it from a ladder built of lies." James shifted visibly. Bondi continued, She sued a man over property valuations while lying on her own mortgage paperwork. She vowed to seize Trump Tower. Now we ask, who takes her brownstone? Who repossesses the trust she demanded from the public? Bondi nodded to a technician, and a campaign clip played. James's voice, resolute, declaring, Donald Trump must pay. I'll take every building he owns if I have to. The footage needed no commentary. It spoke louder than shame. James's knuckles whitened around her notepad, her jaw tight, her composure fraying. The committee chair called for James's counsel. Her attorney, a mid-50s man in a pinstriped suit stretched tight by ego, stood, straightening his notes with deliberate delay. This matter stems from a minor administrative oversight, he said smoothly. Miss James never resided in Virginia. That's undisputed. She clarified this with her broker and corrected the record. He waved a page like a shield. This isn't a crime. It's a clerical misfire. Bondi didn't blink. She slid a single sheet across the table to the committee staffer, who held it to the camera. The screen displayed Fannie Mae Form 30,047, the box checked. This will be my primary residence. Signed, Letitia Ann James. Bondi's voice was crisp, lethal. You don't check that box by accident. You don't sign a federal housing statement by accident. And you don't get subsidized terms unless the system believes you're telling the truth. James snapped, shoving back from the table, her nameplate rattling. You think this is about a form? This is an execution disguised as ethics. You want a scalp, not the truth. I stood up to a man who lied to banks, investors, voters, and now I'm the con artist? Her eyes blazed. Pam Bondi wants to talk law. She ran for office and lost. A failed politician playing courtroom prophet. You don't judge me, Bondi. You don't have the spine. The gavel cracked. Miss James, this is a formal hearing. Maintain order. Bondi stood, unruffled. I don't judge you, Miss James. The law will. And no one's after your scalp. We're just reading what you wrote, under penalty of perjury. The chamber doors parted, and a man in a navy suit approached the witness table, adjusting his tie with purpose. Aaron Dell, mortgage loan processor, Midbank, Norfolk, Virginia, he introduced himself. He placed an email on the table, sliding out a copy. I was instructed to approve a residence loan for 604 Sterling Street, requested through a proxy for Ms. Letitia James. He held up the email, read aloud by a staffer. Process the loan as primary residence per AG's directive. Attached, a scanned note in careful script. Approve as primary per AG's directive. No hesitation, no stutter. James inhaled sharply, her fingers pressing the table as if to bend it. A reporter scribbled, Game over. Bondi stood, hands on the table, letting silence build like a fortress. You call this political, Ms. James, but let's be clear. What's personal is the Brooklyn mother denied an FHA loan because her paperwork wasn't perfect. What's personal is the Norfolk veteran who missed a housing grant because funds were allocated elsewhere while you checked a box you had no right to. What's personal is the law, my life's work, reduced to a slogan by someone who treats truth as disposable. You said, no one is above the law, but meant, no one I dislike is. When it came to your signature, your form, your perjury, you were the exception. Her voice didn't rise, but its weight did. You weaponized public trust for headlines, used the DOJ as a megaphone. Now the rules you wrote are being read back to you, and you cry foul. I don't care about your party or your press team. I care that you lied, holding a title that demands truth. The room didn't applaud. This wasn't a rally. but no one looked away. James's fingers curled inward, not trembling but tensing, as if trying to reshape reality. The DOJ had already clicked escalate. A formal criminal investigation was launched. Mortgage fraud, misuse of public funds, false declarations on federal housing documents. The Eastern Virginia grand jury had its files, the FBI its agents. In a federal office, a printer hummed the quiet requiem of James's political career. She didn't faint or cry, but her finger twitched at the desk's edge, scraping wood. A lawyer's tick, a liar's tell. The House Ethics Committee met behind closed doors, 36 members beneath the Republic's crest, ballots in hand. Democrats wavered, loyalists held firm, but moderates from swing states eyed headlines and polls. One muttered, "I'm not sinking with her." Bondi, present, didn't shout. She stood, voice a scalpel. If the face of justice lies to gain benefits, weaponizes law enforcement against enemies, was it ever justice, or vengeance in legal garb? If integrity's symbol commits the crimes she prosecuted, she's not just misconduct, she's a fake. The ballots read, "Refer Letitia James for prosecution and recommend removal," passed by majority cold and final. Norfolk, Virginia, never asked to be a stage for political ruin. At 604 Sterling Street, paint peeled, and a cracked sidewalk mocked permanence. James stepped from a rental car, alone, facing a silence heavy with judgment. A foreclosure notice hung on the door. Property seized, federally backed mortgage default. She stared too long, then peeled it back, the hand that signed indictments now grasping her own reckoning. Across the street, a teenager filmed, smirking. This was Letitia James's house. Now it's a museum for bad karma. She exhaled, a sigh, a prayer, and glanced at the window where she'd once posed for a home ownership article. A faded frame inside read, "Justice is the highest virtue." The words stood clear, but their world had crumbled. From another coast, another voice spoke, calm and final. When justice wears politics' mask, truth always finds the exit. James turned, not to the car or redemption, but into the street, where reputations don't echo. They vanish, one scandal at a time.